to Being Matthew 25, a new live stream series from the Presbyterian Mission Agency. I am Diet Decker, social media strategist for the agency, and your host for today's episode. We are thrilled you joined us today as we embark on this new journey to create an online space for storytelling, hard conversations, and a place where art and music can inspire transformation. Thank you for joining us. As we begin this new year, many clergy and congregations are finding themselves continuing in a time of transition and unknown. The ongoing pandemic and the introduction of yet another new variant, Omicron, has prolonged an already tiring period of uncertainty. And so many churches and leaders are facing difficult decisions. Should we return to online services only? Should we do the hybrid, the social distancing, masking, remote? It's all a lot. And we're struggling and figuring out how to provide all of this. Uh, what we had hoped would only last weeks or months is now entering into its third year. And it's safe to say there really is no return to the way that things used to be. Now, I have heard some scholars, theologians, and psychologists referring to this stretch of unknown transition as liminal space, a time between what was and what is next. And the word liminal comes from a Latin word, limen, which simply means threshold. So, liminal space is a place of transition, of moving from one room to the next, so to speak. And we are in a time, in this time, moving from life as we knew it, what was, to what will be. And we find ourselves in the season of waiting and not knowing what is yet to come. Some say in this liminal space, this time of transition and unknown is really where possibility lies. So today I am sitting down with our president and executive director of the Presbyterian Mission Agency, Reverend Dr. Diane Moffett, to talk about living in the liminality, this in-between time, and what impact and possibilities this time in history might mean for how we do and be a Matthew 25 church. Welcome, Diane. Thank you so much for joining us today. It is a thrill to have you. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Dee. Thank you. It's good to be here.
It's great to have you. And I know that we had hoped that we would be able to be together. But once again, Omicron has stuck and out of, a presence of wanting to be cautious and not spread anything. We have decided to handle this conversation remotely. So let's hop right on in. Okay. How about that?
It sounds good to me.
All right. I spoke earlier about the liminal space, right? And you and I have had this conversation, a time of unknown and transition. And, Richard Rohr asserts that this liminal space is actually a sacred space to which we should strive to go to often. And he says, it is in this space of unknown and transition in which the Spirit moves and possibility for the old fall away and the new to be built occurs. So, can you talk a little bit about how you've experienced the last 2 years and what possibilities you might see for the Presbyterian Mission Agency as the Spirit moves?
Thank you for that question. Yes. So, the word that we have decided in terms of the employees for this year, I think kind of reflects what we have been going through, but we're naming it this year. And what liminality gets to, something is happening. Something new is coming forth. For those of us who are women who have born children, we know that it's in that dark, watery womb when the thing is unseen, and yet you can begin to see a child and the effects of that child coming forward. But it's a time where God is creating and doing kind of a mystical, powerful work that is seen and yet unseen, yet to be revealed. And so I think of it in terms of giving birth and the evolution that happens with the creation of human siblings. And I think what's going on right now is that something new is being birthed. So that Isaiah 40, behold, I'm doing a new thing. That thing is happening. And our desire, my desire, as I looked through the agency and thinking about what we've done, was to discern. So we've spent 18 months in discerning and praying. We invited other agencies, the Office of General Assembly, Presbyterian Foundation, Board of Pensions, HILP, Presbyterian Publishing Company, Presbyterian Women, our friends at ASG. We have invited mid-council leaders, pastors, seminary professors, educators, people from all walks of life around the church, different people of color and different ages and different orientations, LGBTQIA plus. We wanted to listen to what is happening and to discern, to intuit what the Spirit is doing, and to get ourselves in line, to try to let go so that we could become the places where God could deposit the dreams that God has within us, and that we would give birth to it. So we've done a lot of listening, and we're very excited because we were accompanied by a group of consultants who had their ear to the Spirit and their ear to the church, and really gave us a lot of a wonderful report. The vision implementation process came out with a report about rebuilding and re-envisioning. And it was their report, our consultants' report. And we're not going to necessarily do everything in that report, but they give us a good base from which we can begin to think, and we're already beginning to act upon some of the recommendations, because we've heard these things come up from Presbyterian leaders and Synod leaders and pastors. And we know that we are in service to them, and they have had, along with us, a very challenging time as we're dealing with this pandemic and trying to listen and trying to discern what is it, God, that you are doing, so that we can continue to engage the world. So I'm excited. I think Matthew 25 has really taken root, despite and perhaps because of the pandemic. People really begin to dig down and say, how can we engage? How can we be the church? Because the church in so many places, in terms of the physical building, the church is not just the physical building, right? Though the church is ultimately the people, but the physical building shut down. And so the idea was, how do we be the church? How do we do what we need to do? And just kind of rethinking our call to bear witness to Christ. How do we do it in this context?
I want to follow up on you gave the example of, we're birthing a new thing, and the birth process is, that 9 months can be painful, and the birthing of a new thing can be as exciting as we all are to meet our child for the first time, and as much as we anticipate that, it doesn't come without some bumps and bruises, and it doesn't come without a little bit of struggle and pain. And I'm thinking particularly as we're the church is figuring out, how do we live and be the church after COVID, and after, going through this prolonged time of uncertainty. And so, we're finding ourselves 2 years after this, well, not even after the pandemic, but 2 years into, more than 2 years into the pandemic. And our nation is, perhaps more politically divided than we've ever been. And many of us are tired of living in this period of unknown and transition, this liminal space. And I found a story that the Washington Post ran on Christmas Eve, talking about the exodus of clergy. over the past couple of years, and I want to quote it here. It says, amid fights about masks and vaccine mandates and how far religious leaders can go in expressing their political views that might alienate some of their followers, to whether Zoom creates or stifles spiritual community, pastoral burnout has been high. What would you say to pastors who are feeling burnt out, tired, perhaps a little hopeless about this living in this time of uncertainty and unknown of what is yet to come? Both, I would say, both within for how to live within the pandemic, but also being a Matthew 25 church and part of the PMA.
Yeah. So first, let me give out a shout out to the pastors and mission coworkers and partners who are doing the heavy lifting on the ground. I spent over 30 years in parish ministry, and it takes a unique set of gifts to really lead and people anyway, and especially during a pandemic, and with a commitment to be engaged in the world as a Matthew 25 body. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for those who have been faithful, and thank you for those who are struggling. I feel like, first of all, feel what you need to feel. I think about David's 23rd Psalm says, I walk through the valley, we don't have to camp there. We don't have to set up tent, for the rest of this time. We've been in this thing for 2 years and decide that's where it's going to always be. I think, but we have to understand, we can't ignore that we're tired. We can't ignore that we're feeling a bit hopeless. We can't ignore that we're feeling a little burnt out. I think even as Jesus in the different gospel accounts deals with his Garden of Gethsemane, and all of that, there's this sense of, God, I wish you'd take this away.
God, oh, yes. How long, oh Lord?
Yeah. I mean, and so I think let's understand that we're human. We're human, and this is what we might feel. I think everyone has to find something that restores them, that finds something that brings them delight, that gets the endorphins moving, that helps us to understand that before we were called to do this ministry, we were yet the beloved of God. In other words, it is our being that God is impressed with, not simply our doing. It's important to do. I understand that. I'm not discounting that. But first of all, be who you've authentically are, and ask those questions of God and find ways to restore oneself. I think also the issue of call. We were not called. Jesus said, look, in this world, you're going to have trouble. But be of good cheer. I've overcome the world. We don't get a pass on suffering. We don't get a pass on pain. We don't get a pass on grieving. Jesus didn't get a pass on that. He did that. So when we say that we're following Jesus and we've been called to help lead a people or to be a part of a community, we've got to come back to that sense of call. And perhaps, as Mordecai said to Esther, perhaps you have been called. I have been called. We have been called for such a time as this. Yes. Perhaps this has not caught God in surprise, all of the stuff that we're going through. And it is not by chance that we stand in this place. So we must allow our spiritual curriculum to tutor us. Because as we deal with those issues, whatever it is, where are we really? Someone said the faith that is not tested cannot be trusted. Where are we? What do we really believe? Who are we? These are the questions that difficult times like these bring to bear. And I think it's important to mature, for our souls to evolve, for our understanding of who we are and what God has called us to do to evolve. And so I just want pastors to be kind to themselves, to know that it is not easy doing the work. I have lots of empathy, particularly now that you've got to have all these technological things. If you don't have it, you better get somebody who does, because you got to be able to create something online if you're online. And even if you're hybrid, it takes it takes some skill to be able to do that and to
Mm,
form a sacred space for folk. So there's additional piece of learning for us. But this is what the age requires. This is
yeah,
the requirement. So
right.
I be kind and help and allow this to be a tutoring for what the things that we may need to do in order to help others.
I am, as you know, we are allowing folks to ask questions via our live stream on Facebook and YouTube. And we have a great question that came from Darla. How do we communicate the changes taking place at the PMA to our church members? And how do you foresee these changes impacting our congregations, if at all?
Um, First of all, thank you for that question. We have endeavored, the Presbyterian Mission Agency always works in partnership with our presbyteries and synods in terms of sharing about Matthew 25, and then we get invitations to churches and what have you. I think the first thing is to visit the website and or call us. I know, Dee, that you'll have a information about how to get in touch with us so that we can come and talk with you, first of all, about how you
Mhm.
might talk to a greater body. There's information on the website. Matthew 25 is biblically, theologically, ecclesiastically, and practically, um, uh, you know, uh, relevant to congregations. It is about who we are. We have been, quote unquote, saved to serve, John Calvin said.
Mhm.
We have been called to go out, but we can't give people what we don't have. And it's hard to take them where we've not been. So we've got
Mhm.
to do some work and to understand that this call on our lives as believers is not just the vertical call for our own spirituality and our own awakening and our own growth and development, but it is to have that serve as a basis for which we might share what God is doing with us with others. That we might, as we are healed, that we might be agents of healing. As we are being fed, that we might find ways in which we can partner with, listen to our community, and
Mm.
learn. And I think Matthew 25 is very relevant to what's happening in every single community, whether you're a rural community in Alabama or you are in the city of Chicago or a suburb. Matthew 25 talks about how is it that we are dealing, nations create people. Jesus is judging nations, create the people that tend to be either open to the cries of those who are in need or not.
Mm.
And so we've got to be thinking about the systems that we are a part of and how we can transform them so that they align with God's kingdom. And I like what Jim Marion says, and we say kingdom, right? Because we don't want to
Mhm.
be talking about some kind of hierarchical, kind of dominating thing, but a table that was open to whomsoever would come. And so but these kingdom principles, they speak of where Jesus is coming from, that
Mhm.
everyone is precious, that there is a quote good Samaritan, he taught, that if you want to be great, become a servant. If you want to be rich, sell all you have and serve the poor and follow him. If you really want wealth in your life, the last shall be first. If you want to save your life, lose it. These are kingdom principles that he's trying to teach us to embody so that we can be free to be able to use the gifts and talents that God has deposited within us to change the world. We want to be good stewards. I don't want to have, at the end of the day, and I'm hoping congregations and communities don't want to say, oh, we wish we would have done this. No, go for it. Move out. Be led by the Spirit. Lose your life. You'll find it. And I think that those congregations that have embraced with very intentional purposes, Matthew 25's foci, developing congregational vitality, which means that disciples are being made, that people are being enriched in their faith, and they're going out and engaging their community. They're making a change. When you do, you'll find that communities come alive. I know I come alive when when you're not just hearing, but you're actually
Mm.
doing the work. It is life-giving to lose your life. And it sounds counterintuitive, but kingdom principles often are. And so
Yes.
I think what you've got to do is understand what Matthew 25 is about so that you can then talk to people. It's about doing this work. So as we are saved, Jesus said, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he's anointed me to preach good news to the poor. As we are saved, we center the poor. We center the marginalized. We center those who are victims of racism, who we have counted unworthy, victims of oppression, maybe because of their sexual orientation, victims of oppression because of perhaps a physical difference. Those people who have been shunned aside as if they're not as important,
Mhm.
those are important to Jesus. And when we
Absolutely.
do the work that he's called us to do, we will stand with the least of these because he was
Mhm.
found among them. We might get thrown in jail. We might, for speaking truth to power, like he was. We might
Mhm.
find ourselves running, like his family had to run when Herod was trying to kill all the baby boys. We might find ourselves in need of a safe place, in need of welcome. When we're doing this work, we encounter Jesus. He is among the least of these, which is not just other people, it also includes those of us who will find ourselves in the same exact place as we
Mhm.
do the work.
I think we've got a great question from another one of our viewers. And I think you've kind of answered this, but what difference will it make to be a Matthew 25 church? And I would love to hear your answer from the viewpoint of, you know, what difference would it make for individual churches to be a Matthew 25 church? Maybe why should we do this? Why is this important?
Well, I think it's important, first of all, because it's a biblical mandate.
Mm,
Dealing with the issues of poverty and the intersectionality, how most people who are poor are disproportionately poor, are Black, Indigenous people of color, are women. So you got to deal
mhm,
with those oppressive systems. You're doing the work that God has called us to do. Jesus declared in Luke 4, Isaiah 60, right? He used Isaiah's words. So, in order to be faithful to the biblical mandate, we have been anointed. The Spirit of God, he said, is upon me. The anointing or the touch of God is upon our lives so that we might change the world and we
mm,
might be good news. So, we've got to make sure that we understand that being a Christian is about changing the world. And Jesus said, you got to take up a cross to do that, beloved, because a lot of times the world's not going to want to listen to you. Because those who are
mhm,
in power, they will do everything. They will lie, cheat, and steal to stay in power. But
mhm,
you, my beloved, you must be a person of integrity and you must
mhm,
speak the truth. And when you find yourself persecuted because of it, blessed are you, right? So
mhm,
it is a sense of being faithful to the mission. We're not just called to simply go along with the system or to participate in our own oppression. In other words, I don't think the system, those who are in power, mind us being empathetic to people who are poor or having pantries or whatever. They love that because they continue to do the same systems, and the church will feed them. The church will take care of them. But Jesus calls us to look at ourselves as nations and as people groups and to change those things. Right? That's the
mhm.
invitation there to say it's not just to feed them, but to ask why do they need fed? Because
Yeah.
most people be fed. It's to
Mhm,
look at those systems, and that's what got him killed. He was
mm,
killed by the government. He was killed by because of Roman sedition, executed. He wants us to understand that this call on our lives to help people means that we've got to lose our
mhm,
lives. And so
mhm,
why should you join? Because it's biblical. But the other piece is because we're the church together. And there are Presbyterian churches that are, 2,000 members, or larger churches in, big cities. There are Presbyterian churches that are 12 and 13. But together we do our mission, we do our part.
mhm,
And this is clarity and intentionality about what it is that we are seeking to do as we go out into the world.
mhm,
We're
mhm.
making disciples who are changing these systems and are helping us to live abundant lives.
Diane, you know that we could talk forever about this and being Matthew 25 and why we should do it, what it means for transformation in our world and our communities. We've got a question actually that is going to bring us into the next segment of our episode. Thank you so much for being here, and we're going to hear from you in just a little bit, I know. So don't go too far. John has asked, are there any stories of Matthew 25 churches and the new work they are doing? Well, John, guess what? In every single episode of Being Matthew 25, we are going to showcase a Matthew 25 church in action, telling their story of being a Matthew 25 church and being a catalyst for revolutionary change in their world. Today, we are showcasing Central Presbyterian Church in Princeton, Kentucky, a Matthew 25 church that knows something about living in a time of transition and unknown. You see, shortly after signing up to become a Matthew 25 church, their longtime minister retired, and their new transitional pastor, Reverend Donna Webster, and the congregation began their Matthew 25 journey. Just a few short weeks ago, this church and their community was hit by a devastating tornado that swept through Western Kentucky. And once again, the church and their ministry is in a time of unknown and uncertainty. Please join us as we watch the story of Central Presbyterian Church and how they are being Matthew 25.
Was here as their permanent pastor for about, I think he was here for 8 years. And a wonderful, wonderful pastor. And prior to him leaving, I found out that Central Presbyterian signed up to be a Matthew 25 church. So, of course, about this time, COVID hit. And now it's that question, what does that mean to live into being a Matthew 25 church? One of the ways that we started doing that is we began a Spanish ministry here. And so for about 20 years, there are about 300 migrant workers that come into Princeton and the surrounding communities. And so we started having a Spanish worship service that ran during the agricultural season. And it was amazing. I worked with Reverend Rosa Miranda at the general office with Hispanic Ministries, and she helped me and walked with me through this. We were able to take some of the devotions that Reverend Godchild did for our radio ministry here. That's the beauty of being in a rural community, that there's a radio station here. And so we took those, we translated into Spanish, and we gave those out.
As Christians, we all have in our heart the desire to fight against racism, to eradicate poverty, to reach out to others. But sometimes it's difficult to know how to start, where to start. And I was an elder in this church many years ago, and I was responsible for mission committee, and month after month I had nothing to report, nothing. But then we started very small, and I think that's what Matthew 25 is. We started very small, very modest. And what amazed me was the response of the church, of our congregation. They were all in each time. Each time we came up with something, they were all in. And that was such a blessing.
We, one of the great things about a live stream is that sometimes things get a little glitchy. And so we are going to try and reboot that video. But in the meantime, Diane, I think you have a special invitation for some folks.
Yes. So if you are listening today and your church or presbytery or synod or your group, sometimes it's Presbyterian women, sometimes it's other groups that want to be a part of this Matthew 25. If you are interested, we would really encourage you. This is really about us coming as a church, strengthening our witness together as the Presbyterian Church USA. We are excited about the things that are happening. We want to continue to make and nurture disciples who are doing this important work, who are continuing the mission of Jesus Christ. And so if you have not signed up to be a part of the invitation, we're inviting you to go to our website, presbyterianmission.org/Matthew 25. And, look at the website and sign up. I mean, you've got to talk with your pastor, if you're congregation, talk with your session. If you're a presbytery, talk with your governing body, but look at it. Think about it. It's not just you, but it's about you being a part of a connectional church. And together, this gives us a way to celebrate, to understand what it is that we're trying to do and to do it together. We also want your stories. And so you can contact Dee Decker today at PCUSA. I know it's scrolling on the line because we want to know what those churches who've already signed up. We want to know what your stories are. Like Central, they started this worship service in Spanish, and it is truly as they reach out to this community, learning more about what these workers are going through and how they can advocate and be a part of enriching their lives as they listen to and partner with them and expand their world. This is the kind of thing that we want to do. We want to engage our world and make a difference. So we invite you, if you have not accepted the Matthew 25 invitation, I would love to come to talk to you. We have people on staff here that can talk to you. Get in touch with Dee Decker at pcusa.org. Again, she can help you get to that. And also you can go to our website or call our office. There's other ways to find out about this invitation. But we really are encouraging all churches, presbyteries and synods, join us. We've just about reached the 50% mark of presbyteries. 77% of synods are Matthew 25, and we're beginning to dig down into the work. And it is bringing new life into churches in so many different ways. There's a church in Los Angeles that started reaching out to people who didn't have homes in their area, and the life that it is brought to them. And believe you me, they're advocating for them, for laws and for policies to happen so that people can get housed. And so we want to make a difference in the world because Jesus makes a difference in our lives. So thank you. If you are Matthew 25, continue to share about your experiences with us and with your colleagues. And if you've not become Matthew 25, please contact us because we would love to talk with you more about it and to get you started on a road where you will join with many others in this denomination who are clarifying their mission work, because a lot of us are doing this work. We just want to go deeper in it and to look at systemic ways in which that need to be changed. So I hope that I've gotten it, answered some of your questions.
We have gotten more questions than we could possibly answer in one show. And as you know, we're trying to keep this short so folks can watch this as they're eating lunch and that type of thing. But trust me, hear me when I say we are taking note of your questions and want to invite you to join us next month for our next Being Matthew 25 live stream. It's going to be February 17th at 1 p.m. We are going to be joined by the Reverend Dr. Flo Watkins, the Reverend Shannon Vance Ocampo, and we're going to have some stories from our presbytery in Seattle, who's a Matthew 25 presbytery. As Diane said, we want to hear your questions. We want to connect you, and we want to hear your stories. So please reach out to me. You can email me at diet.decker pcusa.org, or shoot me, call me on the phone. You can, people know how to get a hold of me if you call the Presbytel. So we want to get you connected to being a Matthew 25 church. We want to hear your stories. So again, if you can shoot me an email at diet.decker@pcusa.org. There it is. It's scrolling now. And mark your calendars for next month. Diane, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy calendar to be with us and to share the good news of being the hands and feet of Christ, being a Matthew 25. So until next time, peace.
Thank you, Dee. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.